Hello and welcome back. So for the 75th anniversary of Formula 1, I put out a vote to people on the channel, and now I'm building the winner, which was the 1992 FW14B Williams Renault, the World Championship winning car from Nigel Mansell. So as you can see here with the cowling, the first thing you need to do is to decide which Grand Prix version you're going to build. I'm going to do the British Grand Prix version, which Mansell won. That's you've got these little panels which go at the back depending on which version. There's also some other modifications you can make to the front wing depending on which one you're going to do. As you can see, it's all moulded in white. No section here needs to be removed quite carefully as they've added the injection points to the side, so make sure to sand those down. You've then got a panel which goes on the bottom of that as well. There it is. This will all need to be Williams Racing Blue. I think Tamiya says that's TS44, which is brilliant blue. However, I've used some Pro Scale paints, colour matched paints for this one here, which I'll show you later. Rear wing is mainly sort of assembled like this. You've just got a couple of the horizontal pieces to put on top of that. Quite like it that Fujimi do this, because when I built some Revell Formula 1 cars, I found the rear wings were often quite difficult to assemble, especially with the decals on. Make sure to remove any mould seams. I've seen this car at Silverstone a couple of times and took some good pictures of it. As you can see, you've got the classic yellow, blue and white livery, which I'm going to work on here. Helpfully, the kit comes with masking decals. Here it's been primed in ProScale's white primer and then painted in gloss white over the top of that. I just use a spray can for the white. So these sections go down the side, and then as well as that, the instructions give you some places where you need to add your own masking tape as well. It's fairly flexible, so you can sort of move it around to get around the curves and things like that. It's worth just snipping this along the top so you can fold it along the edges. So the order I'm doing the paint is white first, then yellow, then blue, as obviously you want to start with the lighter colours before going on to darker ones. That will help with your coverage. And as I said, I'm using Pro Scale paints. I'm using Williams Racing Blue and Camel Yellow, which is actually the Lotus colour, but it is the same colour that was used on Camel sponsored cars like the Benettons and the Williams. Make sure to cover this really carefully so you don't get any bleeds. You can see the cockpit here is kind of matte black. You've got red seat belts. You need to do this at this point because the cockpit needs to go together. So I'm using this 1/20th scale seatbelt set A from Tamiya. These say 70s, but they also go up to the 80s and early 90s as well. Got photo etch parts in there as well as the seatbelts themselves, which are self-adhesive. If you want to see a full guide to this, click the link above. These are a bit fiddly, but I get on with them quite well. And the fact that they're self-adhesive really helps to glue them into place. When adding the photo etch parts, just peel away the little edge so that you don't expose all of the adhesive backing, and then tweezers can really help to get the buckles into the right position. There we are. You want to cut quite close to the seat belts, as if you're not too careful you might end up with a kind of white edge. Interestingly, this kit comes with Sabelt decals for the seat belts, but actually nothing else. There's no raised detail or anything like that. So if you do want to add seat belts, this is your best bet. Buy something like this, or alternatively you could use a bit of spare masking tape or ribbon. The little central buckle, the release clip, that needs to be made out of several pieces, which I'm using a small amount of super glue gel. This is Loctite. That goes in the centre there. Now the difficulty with adding this at this point is that then you need to paint the rest of the body, so this will all need to be masked off when it's in place. Same goes for the little dashboard section here. I used paint pens to pick out the buttons, a bit of gold pen to do the kind of steering wheel column, and then you've got the little dashboard decal as well. Painted the inside of the cockpit in semi-gloss black and added the seat and this section with some Tamiya extra thin. There are some switches on the side of the seat which are picked out with a little bit of white, and thankfully the position for the seat is quite clear and obvious, so once you've got that in, look around the outside to make sure you've covered all of the visible places with black paint, and you've got these decals which go on either side as well, FIA, accreditation and things like that. So I don't like how this goes together really, because as I said, it means that you've got the seat that you'll need to mask off. Not only that, you've got big join seams down the middle and the roll hoop. So I've taped over that while it's gluing together to try and make it as even as possible. Then I'm trying to sand them down to remove the joins, and I'll also use a small amount of putty. Not too worried about the one underneath because I don't think you'll see it, but these two on top are quite obvious. I'm using a bit of Mr. White R putty. This is from Mr. Hobby. It's good to use putty that is the same sort of colour as the styrene. Most egregious one I think is this one behind the driver's head. And then you've got the masking tape, masking stickers I should say. So what I'm doing here is I'm kind of going around the edge of where this section will be yellow. I'm not going to do all of this in yellow, I'm going to try to sort of mask off. Now how successful this was, I don't know. But yeah, here I am using my Galeri Swallowtail and ProScale's Camel Yellow. Now this you need to build up in light coats. Don't use wet coats, as it doesn't go down very well if you do that. I'm just doing some really light coats here, coming back to it every sort of 5 minutes. So some of these parts, like the mirrors, I've left on the sprue. Okay, now time to remove all of this, see how it looks. I'm going to be really careful with this, don't want to accidentally remove any of the paint. So you see I've got a bit of yellow in places where I don't need it to be, but hopefully the blue will all cover that. Here now using the other masking stickers to cover all this. Now I found later on when this was finished that some of the yellow sections didn't line up with each other as well as they might have, especially around the kind of roll hoop section. So yeah, these masking stickers could be a little bit better, I feel. These ones work quite well because they pretty much give you exactly the right shape. So this section here covers up the active suspension at the front. And this is quite difficult. I found that this was a little bit off-centre, though I was able to rectify it a little bit when adding the trim around the outside later on. So as you can see, I've done blue around the cowling as well. Try to mask all around the edge. I need to be very careful when removing this. Nicely does it. Now, if you're worried that the edges don't look very sharp when you've removed all the masking, the good thing about this kit and the car in general is that there are red and white pinstripes that go along the edge of the yellow, blue and white sections. So that will kind of neaten up the appearance of your model, hopefully, so long as you've done it carefully enough anyway. There we are, already, even without the decals. That is so clearly the Williams, isn't it? This obviously with the roll hoop needs to be masked really carefully. I did find there was a little bit of blue overspray on it, which I removed with a little bit of wet sanding. So this yellow section is slightly too low, annoyingly. This one's okay. There's a little bit of blue that needs to be neatened up. So here you've got the front wing. This is made up of 4 parts. Got 2 sections on the flat part of the front, and then you've got the sidewall sections here. Oh, sorry, I should say it's made up of 6 parts. There we are, attaching those. And these were all painted in satin black from Vallejo. And then the front section here was painted gloss white, and then I masked that off to then do the rest in the same satin black. Quite happy with that, it came out quite nice and sharp. Here's the nose, that's all done in blue as well, and now I'm doing the decals. Obviously you've got red 5, Nigel Mansell's car, or number 6, Ricardo Patrese. Just looking around here at all of the decal positions. Even though you've got instructions in the kit, it's really worthwhile looking at pictures of the real car, because the decals instructions aren't as clear as they should be. I'll also say that the decals here aren't 100% accurate. The maple leaf on the Labatt's logo should actually have a white surround rather than a gold surround like the kit does. So if you are a real kind of fastidious person for accuracy, you might want to get replacement ones. I don't really care. I think these decals look fine. So there we are, red 5 on the nose. Important to get these as straight as possible. Now the masking looks okay here, but annoyingly the yellow didn't line up as well as I would have liked it. Anyway, have a look at the picture of the real car to make sure that you get this all right. Here I'm measuring out the pinstripe decals. Helpfully, they give you more of these than you need, so should you make any mistakes, it should be fairly easy to cut some new ones out and add them along. I'm using a bit of Mr. Mark setter in places. Rolling those into place with a bit of wet cotton bud. So this one here, I'm moving it over to the side a little bit just to try to straighten out the slight lean to one side with this yellow section. I think that helped. This section here is the largest of the pinstripe decals, and what I recommend you do here is cut it in half, because it's very difficult getting such a large and thin decal into place in one go without it snapping. So cut it in half, line it along the edges, and I found this really helped to neaten out this yellow section here on the nose. There we are. That lines up quite nicely. These pinstripe decals are also very large. You may want to cut them in half. I found that I was okay doing it like this, but just remove it from the backing paper very slowly so that you don't cause any tears. There we are. So I think it's best to do these all first before then adding the logos afterwards. Here I've printed my own camel decals for the yellow section. This is based on the British Grand Prix, where they didn't have the camel text, just the logos themselves. If you want to see how I did that, click the link above. They were dark blue. They came out a little bit black, but they were similar to the Goodyear text colour on the yellow sections, so I think that's okay. So I found that these elf logos, I didn't quite like the look of them, so instead I used the ones that are on the large squares. Found that they weren't an exact match for the blue that I'd painted the car, but they were close enough to not really see the difference, and just made it look a lot neater than the masking that I did. There's the camel on there. All of the camel decals on this car are facing left, even the ones on the other side. Now some of the decals here sort of line up next to each other, so it's important to put the bodywork together to make sure that the Renault and the Mansell logos go next to each other. And again, you've got this kind of little person decal here and the Williams active suspension. I actually tried to work out what this person decal is, but I couldn't find out the information anywhere. Now to do the pinstripe down the side, I very carefully masked the nose section to the bodywork, and then I'm cutting these out to make sure that they go along the section. And now very carefully moving them around so that they line up with all the other joints. I then gave it 5 coats of this Kaleido acrylic gloss varnish, which is ready thinned. Once that had cured for 4 days, I gave it a wet sand and then polished it up using some Tamiya polishing compounds. It wasn't to a mirror shine, but I find that Formula 1 cars normally have a little bit of a sort of wobbly paint job. Now for the engine and the gearbox. So these are all moulded in black, and as you can see, you've got 2 halves to the Renault V10, which goes all the way to the rear wing support. The Williams-Renault partnership in the 90s was phenomenally successful, winning 4 drivers' titles with Mansell, Prost, Hill and Villeneuve, and 5 constructors' titles. So I'm using these Galeri paint pens to pick out some details. This is their aluminium pen, which I'm using to pick out holes on the top of the engine, that sort of thing. Painted the engine itself in metallic aluminium, and the gearbox is in a sort of mixture of brown and iron to create a kind of metallic sort of browny colour. These sections here need to have a little bit of carbon fibre on them, so I cut out a small amount of Tamiya carbon fibre decals, put that onto top. And then you've got these little Renault F1 decals that go on the top of that. There we are. Now the rear suspension goes into the underside of this. This was painted in satin black. Got some parts from the chrome sprue. I found the exhausts shouldn't really have been this shiny, so once I glued them together I went over with a little bit of aluminium. Remember to sand away any of the plating when joining it with poly cement. There we are, painting over that to remove the visible join. Then once it was painted, I used some of this Tamiya weathering powder, a bit of oil stain and the orange burnt and blue burnt to just make it look more like they were being used. Sanding away at these joins so that they fit in there nicely with a bit of Tamiya extra thin cement. I added some Tamiya carbon fibre decals to the floor section, especially around the rear diffuser. Also painted the underside of the engine in aluminium. The decals were then clear coated with some Tamiya smoke to sort of give them a bit of protection and also to add a bit of shine. These rear sections here need to be white, and then you've got suspension parts that go over the top onto the gearbox. Got the little axles for the wheels. There's the top of the gearbox. Got lots of these little blue decals which go on the top of parts. I think they probably showed that they'd been checked or that were in working order. Have a look at some pictures of the real engine to make sure you're happy with where they all go. Now, just like the floor, I did some carbon fibre decals on the front wing and went over the top with smoke. Then I added the Canon and Goodyear decals as well. You can see. For the end plates, I didn't use carbon fibre decals as I was running out by this point, but also used a bit of smoke over the top of that to give it the same sort of finish. And then with the front wing, I used a bit of masking tape and did the white section with gloss clear and the rest with matte clear. Cut out these templates for the rear wings and then used a bit more of the carbon fibre decals. These need to be cut into 3 sort of sections to fit around the horizontal parts. I added a bit of matte coat to the inside of those rear wings before then adding the decals to the outside. You might need a bit of softening solution, especially to go around some of the holes where the wing plates would be attached. There we are, number 5. Happy with how that looks. These parts of the rear wing need to be white to meet the Canon logos together as best as possible. So you need to be very careful when adding these parts here. Firstly, I found that the holes at the bottom needed to be opened ever so slightly. I used a pointed file to do that. And the ones at the top were okay, but just do this really carefully, especially if you have painted the inside or added some carbon fibre decals like I have, as you don't want to scratch any of that hard work that you went to. But these actually went in without the need for any glue. It's just held in place. So there we are. These elf decals kind of overlap onto the bottom of the cowling here. So you've got another one here that goes onto the cowling section. I tried to line this up as best as possible. It didn't come out as well as I would have liked. It looks fine here, but then later when I put the kit together, it wasn't so great. So just be very careful with that. So all 4 of the brakes are made up of several parts. You've got some sort of air intake parts on those as well, all painted in black. Push the polycap in with the end of something like a thin brush, because it was quite a tight fit, I found. And then the brake here, I mixed the iron with a bit of grey to make the brakes a little bit more matte, doing the centre in silver with some gold around the outside, calipers in silver. These AP brakes, which is actually a brand that's local to me in Coventry. There you are, those attached nicely. For the front, just like before, use paintbrush to push the polycap into place. And caliper goes on the back. For the tyres, I tried masking off the Goodyear logos, but then I noticed that they were actually slightly different in the early 90s. They used the pattern which was in the decals, the sort of not italic style. So I rubbed off the ones that I masked and painted, and then decided to use the decals. So the wheels were painted in satin black. Make sure to fit the wheels and the tyres before adding the decals. I also sanded around the outside. These are reverse transfers, so cut them out as carefully as possible. Try to leave a little bit of a gap around the outside so you don't lose the carrier film. Push it on firmly to a clean tyre, and then dampen the decal a little bit. Leave it for at least a minute before removing it very, very carefully. This one went on okay, except we lost a little bit of the G of the Goodyear, so I added that on afterwards. And then add the eagle on underneath. These are quite temperamental, so start with the outside tyre wall, and that means that you will have spares. You could always leave them off the inside if some of them don't go well. They're not great, these decals, but yeah, just be patient with them. As well as that, you've got the yellow Fondamental decals that go on the inside of the wheels. These are all exactly the same. Just make sure that they're opposite each other and don't go over where you've got the little valve stem. And you've got a little Williams decal that goes onto each of those wheels as well. That's how they look. Pretty happy with those. Here's the steering wheel. I added a small amount of carbon fibre to the centre. It actually doesn't look like the one here at Silverstone. It's got a little Renault Elf decal in the middle, but I guess they use different ones for different events. I added it at this point because I think I'd finished off with all the masking now. There it is. There's quite a lot of electrical parts that go in the inside of a Formula 1 car, and they've created quite a few of them for this kit. Obviously, you can add wiring if you want to. I chose not to, as I wanted the fitment of the cowl to be nice. You've got the active suspension parts here at the front. A revolutionary bit of kit that really helped Mansell in '92. Then I found that these suspension parts fit quite well. You may just need to sand them down a little bit to help them get into the joints. Give this a gentle squeeze just to join it together. The little headrest cushion thing there. And you've got a small aerial that goes in here. I used a tiny amount of super glue here. I want to be very careful, don't want to damage the paintwork. and this just sits in place on top. Here you've got the brakes for the front. Be very careful when clipping these into place. And then you've got a controlling arm that goes in front of that. Use the tweezers to help get this on. And that does work. Then you've got the section here that goes on and closes all that up. Use these to see where the inside of the side pods need to be painted black. Just test fitting them here. Because then you've got the radiators that need to be attached to the back of those. Again, these are chrome plated, so you'll need to sand away a little bit if you're going to use some poly cement. I'm using a small amount of super glue for it. And there we are, that all fits on like that. Used a bit of Revell poly cement to fix this onto the floor, and then you've got some wires to attach, tubes, that sort of thing. The front wing fits to the nose very nicely without the need for any glue. Just be very gentle, because if the paintwork isn't cured, then you'd leave a big old thumbprint on that, so nice and gently. You've got the little windscreen here. I used a tiny amount of super glue to attach that. It just goes over the edge of the cockpit, so be very careful. Also got rear light on the back. I used silver on the back of that and a bit of red Sharpie on the front. Wing mirrors painted yellow with the chrome mirrors in the back of them. Used a tiny amount of super glue here. Want to be very, very gentle, don't want to damage the paintwork. There we are. Used a tiny amount of silver on the top of that just to add the sort of screw. And then when adding the cowling, you want to be careful to push them underneath the wing mirrors at the side to not accidentally knock them off. And then squeeze this down from the sides into the pinpoints. There we are, be careful with that cover at the front. I found that one of the worst bits about this kit was actually fitting the wheels. I didn't film them because it was just so frustrating. They just very, very tight, very difficult to add them on. One of them's even fallen off here. So in many cases they are just kind of pushed on as gently as possible. There are two vertical supports that go on the back of the rear wing, and that just clips into place. I haven't glued it as it's easier to add and remove the cowling without the wing, and the front nose just goes on like so. Here's some final photos, some with the engine cover removed, and some final thoughts from me as well. Generally a decent kit, some downsides though. For value, I'd give this a 4 out of 5. It was about £40, however it may be out of print now. Assembly, I'm giving a 3 because I think the masking and also the fitment of the wheels just let it down. Generally it's okay though. Accuracy, pretty good, lots of detail underneath, give it a 4. Quality, also pretty good. 4. Legacy, championship winning car. Active suspension, 5. That gives you a pretty decent BOAB score of 20 out of 25. Let me know what you think. Do you agree? Have you built one of these? Would you like to in the future? Thanks a lot for watching. Please do like, hype the video if you have seen that option, and I'll see you next one. Thanks a lot.